Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hunter Mozingo, Associate Portfolio Manager and Research Analyst for Revere Asset Management, here bringing you your daily market insight video on June 23rd, roughly 30 minutes after market close here in Jacksonville, Florida. And we got all kinds of stuff going on in today's video. We got commodity stocks getting crushed. We got growth stocks showing relative strength. We've got the VIX positive on a day where the markets were all green and we had a follow-through day on the NASDAQ. We just have all kinds of crazy stuff going on today. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to get into the charts, some of the weird phenomena that we saw today, and we're just going to get right through it. So what just happened? Choppy day, strong finish, follow-through day on the NASDAQ. So around lunchtime, it looked pretty abysmal. We had a nice move up in the morning and then pretty much gave it all back. But we held up where we kind of needed to hold up at and ultimately finished really nicely. So G6 up almost 2. This really doesn't tell the whole story here because ARKK was up 7%. So a lot of the stuff that's the growth names that have just been beaten up, having a big day today. S&P up almost 1, Q's up 1.5, Dow up 0.64, mid caps up 0.6, Russell 2000 up 1.25, 60/40 up 0.63, and grow up 0.16. So I mentioned day 4 follow through day on the NASDAQ just has just barely enough volume from what we can tell here. Correction is still in place, but we do have the inklings of possibly some positive constructive action happening here. So moving on to the trend gauge real quick here, no changes on this at this point. Market leaders, short-term, medium, and long-term all still remain down. And then quickly, before we get into the tail of the tape and all the crazy stuff that occurred today, let me just briefly highlight my email as well as Revere. If you're interested in our strategy or you have a question about something I covered in the video, some comparison I made, some level I talked about, a stock I mentioned, whatever it is, don't hesitate to send me an email. Or if you're interested in what Revere does, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, to call us 855-732-5932, or reach out to anybody here, Dan, Don, Tim, or Merrill at revereasset.com as well. So let's get into the tail of the tape. And we're going to get through this pretty quickly here. So what we had today was a relatively tight range on the S&P. It was only about a 1.5% range or so, 3743 up to around 3800. Which is below the average true range. Currently, that's around a 2.5 to 2.7% move per day, but a strong finish nonetheless from the S&P as well as all of the other indices. Sentiment-wise, we actually saw the VIX up a small amount today, basically flat right here at 29. Put-call ratio at 0.93, kind of still just hovering in that 0.9 to 1 area that it's continued to live in. Haven't really seen a meaningful a pullback, I guess, in this put call ratio yet. Since the beginning of the year, we've kind of just been steadily trending higher on that above 1, but haven't really seen this come down in a major way and stay down really whatsoever since this downtrend started here. Fear greed up just a tiny bit to a 23. So we're still back below all the moving averages. So the bear case is still in effect for sure, but some positives are starting to emerge. Like we said, day 4 follow through day on the NASDAQ, you're seeing relative strength in growth stocks, which is just speaks further to the fact that the NASDAQ had a day 4 follow through day, but the S&P did not. But nonetheless, some positive stuff starting to show up under the hood, and we're going to look at it in just a second. News-wise, China president calls for more stimulus, Buffett to add to Oxy, as well as Oxy getting a price target upgrade. That tried its best to fight against the nasty action in oil stocks today. What were we watching today? S&P versus this resistance and support level here at 3,735, and then resistance basically all around 3,800 here, 3,795 to 3,815, entire day's range within the support and resistance. So still kind of in this range here, looking for a definitive move one way or the other relatively soon here. Action-wise, we opened up 0.6, tight chop. Moved higher initially, rejected right around 3,800, 3,795 to be exact, down to 3,743. I apologize, that is supposed to be in red there. and then trend up into the close, strong close, like I said there. So a low around 37.43 today. The high, this is what we want to focus on here, 3,800, a massive, massive level for the S&P 500 to overcome. So keep a close eye on that tomorrow and just moving forward. Can it finally bust through and close above that 3,800 level, or is that going to continue to be resistance? Notes wise today, day 4 off of the low. So here is the most recent low. Boom, there's the S&P. Many oversold daily stochastic turnups. You can see that happening here with the S&P, but it's also important to note you had these stochastic turnups all in this range as we continue lower. So not a guarantee that things are going to move higher, but it's something you always want to pay attention to. But you got this kind of look on the stochastics on most of growth stocks, a lot of growth stocks and ARKK related names. And then as we saw here, junk rally, a lot of the stuff that's been absolutely decimated catching a bid today. So we ran through performance, G6 up almost 2, 60-40 up 0.6, grow up 0.16. Sector-wise, we had some weird stuff going on today. So this is what I want you to focus on here. XLP, UV, and RE, that's staples, utilities, healthcare, and real estate, 4 of the most defensive sectors, and they were pretty much the strongest all day long. We also saw ITB, home builders, have a decent day with rates coming off a little bit. Bonds had a nice day today. China stocks and software stocks all having a good day, but defensive stocks having a good day. And you wouldn't really expect that the semiconductors would be red on a day where the Qs were up 1.5%, but that is certainly what you got today. Oil's down big, agriculture commodity ETFs down big, metals and mining stocks down pretty big, and jets down. We did buy Zoom today and actually added to it. So bought an initial position, added to it on good feedback, and our beta is now 0.2. Bottom line here, growth strong, NASDAQ follow through day, commodities crushed. But what I left these yellow arrows here because we are still in a pretty dangerous area down here. We still have a lot of work to do to repair on the indices, but we're starting to see some signs of potential hope in individual stocks out there. Declining 50 now at 40.75 roughly, declining 21 EMA now below 3,900. That's something to watch. We closed right on the 8 EMA today. That's kind of the next big moving average to pay attention to, and the next big level. If we can get through 3,800, it's very possible 3,900 could come pretty quickly. Today's close 37.95, strong finish, follow through day on the NASDAQ. Just continuing to kind of live in this range on the S&P, but we're starting to, the Qs are actually showing a little bit of relative strength. So we're going to look at that here as we get into the charts. This is the S&P, like we've been talking about, eking out that close just ever so slightly above the 8 EMA for the first time in a while here, and trying to get through this 3,800 level. Big level to watch. Set your alerts there and monitor that tomorrow and into next week. But that's kind of the big level to the upside to get through first. Then you're looking at the 21 EMA. I know myself and Don have been saying that as well. QQQ, I mentioned showing some relative strength. And if you don't believe me, look at the RS line. This is starting to go up. It made a higher low, and you can see the Qs definitively above the 8 EMA and getting close to the 21, which is at 290. So the Qs close right around 285. They also have the stochastic hookup here. And then moving along here, the Dow, the weakest of the bunch, pretty much, not able to get back above the 8 EMA, at least in that sense. But same pattern, more or less, that you see on the S&P. You want to see it get through this 306 level. It's right around the previous lows. That's the first big level to get up through for the Dow. Mid caps, really not acting the greatest down here. You can see this is RS line has fallen off the table here a little bit over the last week and a half, which is a little bit odd, but it was working upwards here, and you can see just with this latest drop showing some relative weakness. So mid caps not even really all that close to the 8 EMA while the other indices are, and then IWM small caps look a little bit more like the rest of the indices here. Relative strength pretty much in line. Right back up into these previous lows. You want to see IWM through 170 roughly to really kind of get back above the 8 and get back above these previous lows. So indices starting to push up into those previous lows from back in May. QQQ already kind of up into that as the NASDAQ and the Qs have been showing some relative strength. We also We talked a little bit about interest rates and bonds, but I just want to show you here over the last week or so, we've had a pretty decent pullback here on the 10-year note, which conversely, you have the TLT moving up. This is the 10-year Treasury ETF moving up pretty big, the actual bond price itself. So you've got rates coming off, bond prices going up, and you've also got the dollar kind of just hanging out right around this key level. This 28 level is a huge level. It's the highs from a couple years back, maybe 2020, I believe. We'll pull it back on a weekly so you can see, but dollar just continuing to hang out here at this very important level. So let's get into the stocks. And I mentioned we had defensive sector strong today, and that's what we're going to start with. So look at these RS lines over the course of the last, say, week and a half or two. You can see XLP moving up sharply, strong today, up almost 2%, up more than the Qs today. XLU, same type of thing, up about 2.5% today, big relative strength today. But ultimately, an odd day to see growth stocks having a good day and to see these defensive sectors having a good day. And that's why I'm pointing this out to you. XLV has been showing nice relative strength. We're going to look at some medical stocks here in just a second that look really good. And XLRE, real estate, also relative strength today. So all the defensive sectors having a nice day, but you also had areas like ARKK having a good day, which you just don't see very often. The defensive stuff and growth slash the more high risk, high beta stuff does not usually go up together, but today that was the case. ARKK up 7%, back above the 21 EMA. You've got IWO. This is the growth ETF. You can see this is very close to challenging the 21, closer than the S&P, closer than the Dow, closer than the mid caps. That tells you a little bit about some of the relative strength here in the growth land. So a weird day. You got the defensive stuff doing well, and you've got the growth stuff doing well. And we talked about bonds moving higher. I'll show you a different bond ETF aside from the treasuries here. Same type of thing, a strong move over the last week, right up into that declining 21 EMA and the stochastic hookup as well there after getting pretty oversold. So moving along here, we're going to run through a handful of some of the best looking growth stocks that I think are showing constructive price action, possibly developing some bases here while the indices continue to struggle. And these are some of the best names out there, in my opinion. So Datadog, a name we've talked about in a pretty good bit just over the course of the last year or so. You can see this one, just RS line starting to hook up here, possibly running back up into that 50-day moving average, but big time relative strength over the last 4 or 5 days. As you can see, that RS line almost moving up at almost a straight angle here. So Datadog, and what's important here, the names I'm about to show you, at least most of them, Datadog has earnings that got nice revenue growth. Moving along here, DOCN, another name that's holding up well, did not make new lows when the indices did, up about 9% today. Nice stochastic cross, nice earnings here on DOCN. Bros, not up as much as a lot of the others, but up 4% today. This one has earnings too and nice sales. And you're going to notice a similar characteristic. These did not make new lows over the last week or two, while the indices did. GTLB, one that is quite volatile, and also one that's not profitable, but one that's had some major volume and some really impressive price action recently over this 50 level. That's a really big move for GTLB. CrowdStrike has been showing strength recently. You see this RS line just continuing to angle higher here up into the 50-day moving average. So some of these growthier names that have earnings, I know GTLB didn't, that have good sales growth. Names like even like Enphase is a growth name. Solar has been holding up really well. Starting to see some constructive action, some base building, some nice relative strength versus the indices. And that's something you don't want to overlook or dismiss. It could just be a flash in the pan, but it could not be. So we want to keep a very close tab on that, on all those growth names I just went through. In the healthcare space / the medical world, we talked about these last week or a little bit earlier this week too. LLY, strong. UTHR, United Therapeutics, strong. VRTX, also strong. So all of these healthcare names, medical names, really nice moves over the last 3 to 4 days after some shakeout action here. Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon, those were the big heavy lifters for the indices today, excuse me. You can see Apple up over 2%, up more than any of the indices. Microsoft, same situation, up more than any of the indices. And then Amazon, same thing, up about 3% or so, up more than any of the indices. So these big tech, big cap, heavyweight names really lifting the indices higher today, as you had some other areas like oil and semiconductors not really contribute today. Last couple of names here. I already showed you Enphase. I think that solar area looks really attractive. There's some good looking names in there. And then we did buy Zoom today. I don't know if I touched on that on the tail of the tape. I think I did, but we bought Zoom and then added to it subsequently. A nice little move today, kind of bouncing off around where the ADMA is here. You can see big time character change after the EPS and constructive price action here. So we did buy Zoom today. On the bad side of things here, I mentioned semiconductors were down today. Very odd to see stocks have a bad day while the Qs are up 1.5%. But look at the RS line here on stocks. This is unlike a lot of the growth stocks that we've seen that have an RS line that's going like this. Stocks basically the opposite. This RS line is angling down at a pretty sharp rate, really ever since the kind of this last drop began, and hasn't gained any kind of momentum to the upside yet. So semiconductors still very weak, which is something to note. And then obviously oil's just absolutely having a tough go of it today. So XLE dominated by Chevron and Exxon, down about 4% here. XOP, this is oil and gas exploration ETF, down about 5%, from 170 to 120 here in a matter of 2 weeks. I read a stat late last week, I believe, or maybe early this week, that all stocks in the XLE ETF or something along those lines were above the 50-day moving average not too long, a couple weeks ago, and within a week and a half or so, all of them were below their 50-day moving average. So some vicious and very fast moves to the downside in oil space. And I won't go through a bunch of names here. You can, throw a dart. Most of them look pretty similar. DVN down about 5% today. SLB, Schlumberger, this is a name that Don had mentioned that was trying to hold up at the 200-day, breaking through that today, down about 7%. Lots of oil names having a tough go of it today. Now on to the commodities that were getting crushed. And maybe this is part of the reason that growth stocks are doing well. Maybe it's not, but it's certainly something that is taking place in the market. And there's some serious speed to the moves that we're seeing here. And so I'm going to show you a few of these. The fertilizer names, CF and MOS. Both down about 10% today, as you can see. Actually, a little bit of a head and shoulders top here on CF and breaking down below these recent lows here. CF not looking good, and MOS in the same boat. And these are really nasty moves here. MOS through the 200-day. This is 79 to 45 in about 2 months or so here on MOS. So big time pullbacks or drawdowns in these names. But it's not just the fertilizer names. Here's LPX, which is related to lumber. Look at the way this thing has fallen off in the last 2 weeks. The relative strength line just absolutely angled to the ground. Just terrible, terrible action on LPX. ARCH, this is a coal name. Look at the way this one has started to break down today too. Down about 7%, losing that 150 level, which is a big, big area. We're starting to see a lot of these commodity names slash commodity related stocks give way a little bit. And then even stuff like wheat, the agriculture commodity names, corn and soybeans, all kind of doing the same thing, really breaking down from what looked like good charts maybe a week or two ago, don't necessarily look very good anymore. So commodity names getting crushed, growth stocks showing relative strength, and you got a follow through day on the NASDAQ, a day 4 follow through day. Something to keep a close eye on. Our growth stocks possibly starting to come back into vogue, show a little bit of relative strength, and diverge a little bit from the indices. Like I said, it could just last for a week or so, or it could be something more. Nonetheless, you want to stay on top of it and watch it. So again, some of those growth names I covered earlier: Datadog, DigitalOcean, GTLB, CrowdStrike, Bros, just to list a few. But build your watch list. Look for stocks that did not make a new low in the last 2 weeks while the indices were making new lows. That's a really good place to start. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it was a lot of stuff that we went through, but I will see you on the podcast today, tomorrow. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. And one last thing, if anybody sticks around to this point, the VIX was actually green today. Just another weird thing that occurred today. VIX was green while the Qs were up 1.5 and the S&P was up 1. So odd action from the VIX too. So that's it, everyone. Have a great day.